And welcome back. We're continuing our conversation with David Keene, who served as the former president of the National Rifle Association. And he's also, his writing has appeared in Human Events, National Review, and many other conservative publications. And he remains editor-at-large for the Washington Times after 4 years as the paper's opinion editor. David, thank you for holding on for another segment, my friend, because I think this topic is so important, particularly in a city like Chicago, where our governor, Pritzker, signed an unconstitutional assault weapons ban. So thank you for joining me for another segment, David. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. So
let's talk about your American Liberty News. You published an op-ed just a few days ago on May 2nd. I'm going to encourage everybody to go to American Liberty News. I'm going to post this as well on my social media. But David, can you kind of give us just sort of a summary of your latest op-ed and sort of what inspired you to write this piece?
Well, I saw the testimony of Steve Dettelbach, who's the head of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, before the Senate. He was talking about mass shootings, and he was talking about how we need to ban semi-automatic so-called assault weapons, which, by the way, he could not define when asked by a senator to do so. And he was asked by one of the senators questioning him whether or how many of the people involved in these mass shootings, the perpetrators, were on medication or drugs, and a series of other questions about the things that many people think have pushed people over the edge. He said, "I have no idea. We don't look into that. That's really not what we do. We're concerned about the guns." And I used the example in the column of the old saying about if you've only got one tool in your toolbox and it's a hammer, pretty soon every problem that you confront begins to look like a nail. And to the gun control people, crime looks like a nail. You can solve it with gun control. The mentally ill shooting up schools or malls looks like a nail, and you can solve it with gun control. The fact is that not all problems are that simple. And what we need to do is move beyond that. Look at the problems. Look at them and try to find out the reasons for it. Why is our society now having a crisis with people that are resorting to violence of all kinds in much greater numbers than was the case 10 years ago or even 5 years ago? There's something beyond the existence of firearms that's the cause of that. And if we want to get to root causes, that's what we ought to be looking for. You know, banning guns doesn't do it. Think about this: the one-size-fits-all solutions that the president talks about. We have to ban the AR-15. There are more AR-15s in this country than there are F-150 Ford pickup trucks. Think about that the next time that you see it. There are millions of people own these firearms because they use them for competition, they use them for sport, they use them for hunting, they use them for all of these things. It's the most popular long arm in the United States. If, in fact, it was the gun that was the problem, we'd have a real problem with violence because there are so many of them out there. But the fact is, it's not the gun. It's the person holding the gun. It's the person that's motivated by things that we don't seem to understand, or who is out of control, or is simply, and there are such people, a criminal. And that's where the problem comes, and that's what has to be dealt with. You have to deal with it with the criminal justice system. You have to deal with it with the mental health system, and we're not doing that. Instead, we've got people saying the problem is the gun. No, Mark, the problem isn't the gun. The problem is the person who misuses the gun or misuses anything else to commit a criminal act. That's the problem, and that's what we need to focus on, and that's what the government should be focusing on as well.
My last question to you, David, is, again, every mass shooting, literally every act of violence that happens in America, the Democrats always need a boogeyman. They always need an enemy, and that is the National Rifle Association. But the NRA every day, every year is working to secure schools, for example, and other places. Can you give us a couple of examples of partnerships that the NRA has in working with communities all over the country to make it safer?
Yeah, following the Newtown shootings 10 years ago, the NRA set up what we call our School Shield program. And we advocated several things. One, through that program, we provided schools, particularly schools that couldn't afford it, trained assessors to go in and say, what is it that you need? Some schools felt and believed that they needed armed security in the schools. Other problems are doors that aren't locked, all kinds of lights, cameras, and things that the various schools need. And those assessments cost a lot of money. What we did was we went out and trained hundreds, mostly police officers, sheriff's deputies, and the like, so that within the area of their jurisdiction, schools could get those assessments and figure out what they needed on their own without spending all of that money. And